This evening's Dharma talk is, I think it's the second talk I've given with this title, so this will be talk number 2. I think the first one was given maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not sure of the date, and it's called The Illusion of Control. I thought it might be time to talk about that again a little bit. I have no idea what I said. I did not listen to the talk. I don't need to. And why don't I need to? Because if I were to listen to the talk, I'd still forget what I said by the time I got in here. So, but it is an illusion that we have control. We are constantly, the idea of control, the assumption of control, the belief that we control is constantly being reinforced by everything. Everything from turn signals to steering wheels to doors and everything that we go through and walk around and open up and close down. It looks like we're controlling everything. And of course, in our physical world, this is happening. We're controlling our whole life. Our whole material existence is made up of lots and lots of controls. They do tend to get from the physical area into the abstract area when you get into numbers. And even then there's that illusion of control. And even in accounting, isn't there an illusion of controlling because of numbers? So we have an accountant sitting here, so I have someone to refer to. And it goes on and on. You can go into the arts, you have to have control. You can't play a violin with a lot of control. So I'm not trying to discount that or get away from it. I'm just saying that there's so much of that there that when it comes down to sitting down and watching what happens in the mind stream, we usually notice fairly soon that we don't have a lot of say-so about what's happening in the mind. It's quite perplexing, especially if someone comes and says something to us that maybe not as intentionally hurtful. They're just saying something. But then in our mind stream, it triggers areas of the mind stream and consciousness called the alaya, where that area of the mind that is flooded with everything from memories, preconceptions, ideas, beliefs, so on and so forth. Can trigger that. And if you have spent some time shutting that out, you really can't stop anything. But if you've had difficulty at a particular time and you try to shut that out, sometimes you can succeed. And sometimes the stress in an area, say when you're 3 or 4 years old, is so intense that the mind, because the mind knows what it's doing, consciousness knows what it's doing, this body knows how to digest food. You don't need to tell it. It knows how to pump blood and keep the temperature even. You do not need to interfere with that in most cases. But we want to control. We want to stop feeling this way and feel that way. Or we want to, if we're having negative feelings come up, instead of just receiving the feelings, which is what is being taught here, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, just receive. This training is about receiving everything that arises in the mind stream, even if your partner, your mate, your mom, your dad, one of your children, or your TV program triggers that feeling. Please receive it. Don't abandon, leave, or ignore, or distract yourself from the feeling that is arising by distracting yourself into something else. That is a kind of control what's called ignorance. It's one of the 3 poisons. The other 2, is you want to control something, aggression, stop it, either with your voice or with your words or with your fist, whatever it may be. Not against that. Sometimes you cannot help it. Sometimes you can't help but express yourself in a really strong, intense way. And the other one, of course, is passion, which is hard to track because it seems so workable. It seems so, well, he said, they said, or he did this. And of course, I'm going to have all kinds of analysis come up around that. It makes sense. Well, they said this. Well, they said this about me and it wasn't true. And I could go on and elaborate and tell stories about it. I don't need to. You already know what I'm talking about. What I'm coming back to, there was the talk title, The Illusion. It is an illusion that you're in charge. There is no one in charge. There is no one who controls. You begin to see this doesn't mean you'll just stop functioning. It just means that you'll use and see and have control when it's situationally appropriate. It's time to open the door, control. It's time to close the door, control. But it doesn't necessarily apply to stopping certain feelings and enhancing others. Very interesting story of my Zen master Kobanjino Roshi. A long time ago, I was not there. I've just heard the story a few times, and I've told it a few times. And I just think since the topic is the illusion of control, he was a Kyudo master and archery, Kyudo, where they fire the arrow towards, shall we say, a target. And he was out and somewhere, I think in California on the beach. So I may have this off, so if someone was there, or if they've heard this story and they feel it's more closely aligned to what actually happened than what I'm about to say, then keep it to yourself. He was out there and he pulls back, and there's a group of his students and others around there, and this is a Kyudo practice, which is an awareness practice having to do with archery. Pulls back like this, and the arrow goes flying over the targets way out into the ocean. He turns around and says, "Bullseye!" He very seldom yelled, but I think he did yell that. It seems like we have control. It seems like we can get control. Most people are trying to control their spouse, or trying to control their job, or their employees, or their bank account, or trying to. We as meditators may be sitting down at the end of a 4-hour block set, or maybe an all-day sitting, maybe trying to control the negativity or the emotions that are rising in the mind stream. Usually doesn't work too well. There are ways of working with that. There's a mantra practice, which changes the whole angle of that situation, so that you don't experience those feelings or emotions directly, but you soften them up through expression, mantra. You can answer questions about that if there are some at some point. So the illusion part, if you see that it's an illusion, then as I said, doesn't mean you won't continue to control, but you'll be more kind of transcendentally reasonable about it. You'll have an understanding, an underlying understanding. There's no solid self in the skandhas. That the form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness does not make up a self, a being. You cannot find a self in the form. You cannot find a self in feeling. You cannot find a self in perception. You cannot find a self in the thought process. And you cannot find a self or an individual personhood in any of the 6 sense fields or their objects. But when they all get together and cling together and with a body, it feels like there's someone here. And it will continue to say that or feel that way. That illusion will never go away necessarily. You will not suddenly realize I'm unreal. I mean, if that happens, you're probably taking too much LSD or some other drug. It's possible to have this whole thing come apart. Just the nature of consciousness is such, very sensitive. So you can use chemicals to change this around, but I don't recommend that. I would say just sit down and look at the completely bizarre situation you find yourself in, this illusion of being a living being. You can do that. I highly recommend it. So the illusion of control comes back to, of course, the illusion that there's a separate being who could control, the illusion that there's something that can be controlled. And of course, when we talk about objects, pretty convincing. I can pick this up, I can put it down. I can move my hands from here to there. So we're in control. We have lots and lots and lots of control. But if you try to take something that's happening in the mind stream, a negative feeling or thought, or just an overall sense of malaise that's happening in the mind, sometimes called depression, you say, oh, that's well, I'll just move that from here to there, move it over there. I'll blame something for it. And you can blame something. And there are whole groups of people who, in different areas here, psychology will tell you why you're doing this and may prescribe drugs for you. I'm not against that. You may need to do that. I'm not against what is happening in society or science. But I am saying that before you do anything like that, you might want to get to know who you are, what this is. If you know who this is and and who you are fundamentally through your own consciousness, there's no guarantee you're going to stop suffering. You might suffer more because you're no longer covering anything. It's unreal. It looks so convincing. This physical situation looks convincing. The mind stream, whatever flows or shows up in the mind stream, our thoughts, our irritation with what Ed just said a few minutes ago, or what someone said they were going to do, and suddenly we look around. They said they were going to do that. Now I've got to do it because they didn't finish the job. But then again, we don't know what it's like to be that person who did not finish the job. We don't know what they're going through. Or it could be a person that just never follows through, just never keeps their agreements with anything. That might be a different situation. That may be someone you don't want to ask for their help at all, rather than suddenly they're evil or something. Very difficult to look at another person, have any idea what their karma is and what they're going through. We think we do. We project onto people. I'm very vulnerable in this area. I'm sitting up here running my mouth several times a day or a week and volunteering to be vulnerable. And I invite you to come here. I'm here to help you if I can, not to manipulate you or change you or get you to be someone else. And you're in a similar situation, either in your relationship or your job or you're with your family. You're vulnerable because you're with them, you love them, you care about them. You're very vulnerable to anyone in your milieu, your family that does not have any mind training, or may have some, but they're still spinning around and trying to blame others for what they're going through. This is all over the world, all over. I don't know of another way to address this other than to watch the movement of the mind until you eventually see the truth of not separate, of non-dual. There is no solid self. There is no solid other. That is an illusion, and it's a powerful one. And we are deluded by it daily, hourly, momentarily. Take some questions if there are some.
Hogan Rowing, when someone retaliates by punching or using harsh words, is that losing control?
Are they losing control? From their point of view, they might just be might not think of it that way at all. Just might think you've got it coming, or they need to do that, or they can't help it, or anything like that. There seems to be different levels of that. There seems to be times when you can't help but explode because you're upset about something. Other times when you get some space in there, you can be a little bit more, use the word responsible for your feeling. So you haven't quite hooked up your vocal cords to yell at somebody, or your musculature to shake your fist. So it seems to be so varied. There doesn't seem to be something where you can set up a standard for anybody to adhere to so that they can always be good. Just like our vows, our 16 precepts, the teaching there is to observe them, not to obey them. This doesn't mean that you get to kill people. The first grave precept is don't kill. So it's said that way because that will get you to look right at the act of killing and see what is it that is happening that you end its life. And it starts in with your own thought process. If you're stopping your own thoughts, in a technical sense, you're a murderer. You may never take another living, you may be vegetarian. You may never kill another being, But if you're trying to stop the thought process in some way, this is manipulating. This doesn't also mean, or also doesn't mean that whatever thoughts you have, you validate them and they're valid or they're good or they should be there in some way. Make no comment. Receive everything. Receive the thoughts that show up, the ones that disappear. Don't stop them. Don't enhance them, and don't ignore them. It's a simple way of teaching it. And of course, what happens is we see we can't quite accomplish that. Why? Because control is an illusion. But we need some way to approach it, so we have these precepts. Now, if someone's sitting over here to these precepts, they might feel that they're just able to obey them because they're so good at shutting down. They're so good at turning away from how they feel into some other state that they can't really find a time where they've ever done anything wrong in terms of the precepts. Never broken a precept. Follow me a little bit? I'm just saying you do not have a say-so there. Just looks like it.
Hogan Valley. If someone, for instance, a monk who is intending to obey the precepts is really good at putting a cap on it and showing up in a way that doesn't fight.
So they're actually obeying that precept, is that what you're saying? And what's the question? Are they better than you?
How do you bring awareness into an area where you're just trying to be good?
So you can't really bring awareness. You just can look at whatever is happening and be aware of that in the space in which it's arising. We don't create awareness. The only thing we can do at all with awareness is cover it up. If you're in a physical form, you're going to be able to cover things up or shut them out or turn away from them or fight with them or make excuses for them or blame. So go back to your question. What do you want to know?
Hogan Valley, how do I play with the threshold where one doesn't shut down and yet fears acting in a way that is negative toward people?
That's a good word for a threshold. It is a threshold. It is it's consciousness that is on the verge of action, but doesn't do anything. Powerful situation. What you're doing there, you're working with your negativity, you're working with your emotions, and you're working with that part of identity that is not very strong and is looking for support and wants some action, or also wants the other thing, shut right down and don't do anything. That's also a credential for ego. Or do something and act it out. That's a credential for ego. So you're working in that boundary area. And I highly recommend it. It's very similar to sitting and facing a wall, only you're up moving around in your life. You're just observing what's coming and going. And sometimes it's extremely painful, challenging, threatening. Each person works with us in a different way. Some people cannot help but just fall into that negative area and start expressing negativity. And they'll do it in such a way that just looks like it's true. You'll believe them. They're so convincing because they so much believe their own thoughts and emotions and feelings. They might as well be casting nets around to catch everybody into their dynamic. Some people are so good at that, they're charming. Some people are good at it energetically, but it just feels like walking into a bear cave. More further questions? Anyone on Zoom? Yes.
In your mind, earlier you said something to the effect of sometimes you can't help react in an aggressive way.
Yes,
And then to Hogan's question, you also said that consciousness is on the verge of action or activity, but doesn't do anything. Is that control in both of those cases?
no,
What is it?
awareness. It's always awareness. There isn't anything but awareness. If you want to know what specifically what that is, and I've already mentioned, I told you what that was. It's an illusion. It's not real. It just seems real. It just seems very convincing. Most of the world is swamped by this. They don't even think of the word illusion unless they talk about a movie or something. But their life is real, and they're acting, and their neighbors are really cool, or their neighbors is terrible people, or the whole political system. All you have to do is look at that for a few minutes to get disgusted by any of it. It's just difficult. So what do you want to know?
In your mind, just the whole idea of control. It sure looks like there's a lot of control going on in this country politically.
It does. Let's not get into that area. You can talk.
No, I'm not.
I don't want to do
I'm
that.
trying to formulate a question about just
Okay.
control in
Please do.
general.
Yes.
We make accusations about, well, you're out of control, or you should have more control, all of these. Is that simply a standard that we're arbitrarily trying to have someone measure up to?
I think so. We're all trying to do some of that, trying to do it for ourselves. I just got to get control of myself. So it's not like that's going to go away, but we can look closely at that with awareness. We can see that when we reach out, we use the classical way to look at this. Let's say the 12 links on the chain of existence: contact, feeling, craving, grasping, becoming. It just starts with first there's a contact, and there's a feeling, then there's a pause there. There's a feeling when you're having a negative feeling, and then then something comes up with that is a desire to do something about it. Craving could be a desire to run away and get that out of there because of that kind of feeling. Could be there's a desire to reach out and get something you want, or it could be there's a desire to retaliate to someone who's harmed you. Any number of things. And it also could be just the feeling and just the craving, but no grasping, no reaching out. You're actually responsible for that. It doesn't mean that other times you might not reach out or grasp or do something that would eventually come to what's the eighth link, I think it is, with becoming. Or is it the 10th one? I think maybe it's the 10th. I don't know. I'm not good with numbers. So it's about being aware of that as much as possible so you can see how that operates. That's why we have those concepts. So that we can see the way there's contact, there's eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, emotions, memory, anything that's contact. And then when there's contact, then there's some kind of feeling about it, positive, negative, or neutral. And then there's some kind of craving comes up out of that, or desire, either wanting more of that, whatever came up in the feeling, or wanting less of that. And so it's about observing, being aware of how that works so that you don't get swamped by the passion, aggression, and ignorance that wants to show up and take over your life. Very difficult. We all experience this in our lives in little petty ways, you could say, but still difficult, even though they're simple little things, vignettes that happen for an hour and a half in the morning sometime between ourselves and someone else. And then it goes away, and then that's fine for a while, and then something else shows up. We go back into some kind of difficulty in that area. This might be happening with you, and you might not talk to anyone about it. That's one of the reasons we have solitary retreat, so you can go in and you can go through these without having anyone there to pin it on, so to speak, blame. Just watch what happens in the mind stream. Brings about that word that's not often used after a while, is humility. I just realize there's consciousness, but there's really no one there. No one can succeed. The one that's usually not seen, though, is no one can fail. Yes.
When you're bowing, so when we're on the cushion and have a repetitive thought visit us over and over, which makes it repetitive, is there any control? I'm thinking again of the Tisha's slogan that says change your attitude and relax as it is, which to me sounds like a type of control. Can we grab the mind stream and make it go in a different
Well, you've
direction?
had that experience. Did you feel like you were in control when you did that? When you had a negative situation, as I recall, when you've expressed it a few times, and you've thought of that slogan, and somehow that slogan or something in that area of that slogan has caused you to just drop your agenda, I guess would be a way of saying it. Not that you didn't do it, not that you did anything. It just stop being angry or stop being upset. Isn't that what it was like?
Yes,
But don't feel like you did anything, do you?
not really.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's consciousness. If it happens in terms of thinking, the thought process, then it looks like some kind of a thing we can write a book about and teach people how to do. And of course, there's a lot of that out there.
So are we at the mercy of our consciousness then?
Well, let's say it this way. You're at the mercy. Everything's at the mercy, but there's no one who's at the mercy. There is no solid being. The fundamental misunderstanding is belief in a solid, separate self, just because there's a body-mind complex here with nerve endings and fingers and eyes and ears, thoughts, memories, adds up to nothing. It is an illusion, very complicated one, or a very complicated mosaic, complicated place to be with billions of beings very similar to us, all living and agreeing with each other and elbowing each other, sometimes fighting and playing, sometimes hurting each other and killing each other. Complicated stuff. Further in here, yes.
Not see me bowing.
Assuming.
If we try to, or if we have conditioned suppression of spontaneous body movements like fidgeting, does that energy show up elsewhere in the mind stream or otherwise?
I think it's very situational. It's very individual. I think it's important to be aware of the fidgeting rather than to stop it. I have several students who fidget, sit right here in this row here, and I would watch them fidget. And then if I had a mirror, I could see that I'm probably fidgeting too. So I've never been able to sit totally still for more than half an hour, maybe at a time. And I don't even care. I'm not interested in sitting very still anymore, although I was at one time. So to come back to your question, I would say it's very individual. Some people, if I have someone who's doing that, I try to remind them. I said, be aware that your mouth is doing this while you're sitting or while you're talking, or that your expressions are going a certain way. Like if you watch me talk for very long, you'll see quite often I turn my head one way and then I turn my head the other way. I'm almost like I'm changing gears. I'm going from a really positive thought over to a really negative thought or something like that. But is there something specific you want to ask about?
I guess I'm just wondering if increased awareness of that suppression of movement could lead suppression of movement.
Do you suppress
could lead-
movement?
I think I do, and
Okay.
and I'm finding that there's more of a urge to move that comes up from looking at that.
When you're sitting or in conventional post meditation or both?
Probably both.
Okay, so I'm very biased here. It's always about awareness. It's not about stopping a movement or justifying a movement or doing anything with it. I think less is better, but more is better when it comes to being aware. So if you're sitting very still and you find that you're always have some kind of a shifting thing going on, just be aware of that. Don't necessarily bring it to an end to live up to. We don't do that in this Zendo. You can move here. Zendos I've been in, you better not move or you'll get yelled at. I don't think that's a good way to train adult, mature human beings, is to tell them not to move or tell them when they can go to the bathroom and when they can't. It's just very disrespectful to people's physical situation, not let alone mental. So coming back to what you seem to be asking about, I would say being aware of that rather than trying to stifle it or stop it or turn it off. If you're really aware of that, then it becomes part of your expression. If it's a lot of flaying around, then that might be too much, but you could bring that to a minimum. It's about being aware of it. Like when I'm talking to you, I notice I'm pulling on one of my fingers right here. So, but I may not be noticing that had I not, were I not talking about the kind of a movement that's not particularly in consciousness, and then I'm kind of including movements that I may not do if we were talking about another topic. More about that's a really fascinating area, something I contemplate quite a bit. I can say that if I can watch someone, and I don't do this through converting how someone is acting or what their body language into certain symbols. This means this, or they do this, or they do that, they do this. That must mean that must mean it. It doesn't even go through the thinking process. But by doing, working with people, working with myself and my own consciousness and the consciousnesses of others over a long period of time, I've come to understand more what someone is dealing with, sometimes less by what they say, but by their body language. And when I say language, it's not words, or I'm not converting it to words, but I'm watching the way their posture works either in the hojo or in the White Tower room or in here for that matter, or any other place, or sitting here and facing the wall. Tells me something about them that I feel is helpful if they're functioning with me as a teacher. More?
Not right now. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Sorry I could not respond in a more clear way. Other questions? Jen, are you blowing your nose or is that a question?
Jen bowing, both actually. One question is, as non-separate beings, not
Yes.
separate from the billions of other people, what is our responsibility to other people or to consciousness itself? I don't know. Bowing.
So my understanding is, and the way I work with this myself, is to receive, listen to other people, listen to, even people who are maybe not in your milieu, in your community, but they're just down the street, someone you run into, someone at the grocery store, or for that matter, your family, or those on television who are talking. And so receive that as much as you can. I feel that our responsibility is to be part of the community through whatever the setup is, whether it's television or internet, is to be part of that, but not necessarily to overdo it. And also to see how much we can actually work with that as it is, rather than try to interfere in that or push it around. This doesn't mean if someone comes here and wants to join the Peace Corps, I might not try to talk them out of it, or I might say, you might want to look into that and see what you're getting yourself into, because all of your autonomy comes to an end. Not all of it, but quite a bit. Weren't you in the Peace Corps? Anyone else here in the Peace Corps? Well, two people right in this room were in the Peace Corps. It's a good example of something that looks one way when you go in. It's very idealistic, but quite a bit different when you're in there for a while, wouldn't you say? Would you say that also? So that's just one example. You have another more specific question? I think it's a very good one. Is there-
Jen Bowing. No, I think it just comes from a sense of overwhelm at the prospect of
Yeah.
just not knowing what to do,
Well,
essentially.
it's a big avalanche that's been brewing for, I mean, not just 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, but a long time. I've been just in our government. I've been watching it since the 1950s or 40s when I first started to look around. When my dad did not want to go in the military and knew, he told my mother, he said, I won't be coming back from Germany. And he did not. He did not want to go. At that time, it was mandatory conscription in the military. So he went in, did as good a job as he could, and of course was killed, as some of you heard before, March 11th, March 16th, 1945, just before the end of the war. So, but it's such a huge stretch of just chaos everywhere. And there are all these people trying to do good and trying to do the right thing. And then there's other people that are may think they're trying to do the right thing, but they're more trying to be in control of everything rather than be respectful of everything that's going on around them. Just like Stalin starved millions of his own people. And back in the 1930s, if you read Timothy Snyder's book, which is very hard to read, called Bloodlands, just a horrible book. A wonderful book because it's his book, but what it's about is just heartbreaking. Or if you read, I can't remember her name, but she wrote a book on all the indigenous people that we've completely murdered all of the United States. It's very disturbing to read all of this that isn't in our history books. We don't study any of this. It's all kept aside. Oh, we can't be studying that. So I'm not sure that's where you're even going, but if you start to talk about that situation, I start to think about all of that. Just it's out of our control. We do not have a control of that. You can't enter into an avalanche with a protest sign. I'm not saying the protest sign might not make you feel good, like, well, at least I'm doing something. This is ego. It's saying that at least I'm doing something. I'm doing my part. This is what the whole system is about, is controlling you. You haven't noticed. I'm not against it. I will work with whatever system is in place right now. Hopefully that system won't start to stomp on us over here in the corner of the. So further question about that, if you can go there, help me.
Jen Bowing. I was gonna go in a slightly different direction.
Whatever you want to go.
Just you had said earlier, I believe you said the only thing you can do with awareness is cover it up. Can we not uncover awareness or discover awareness?
Well, yes, what I meant to say is everything is aware. You're aware, but if you're not aware, then you're covering it up, because awareness doesn't have any person behind it who's aware. There's just awareness, and it just shows up through the sense fields, through the sense organs, through the mind, through the memory, everything is receiving. So covering that up is, I'm not saying that's the only thing you would do. I didn't mean to take you in that direction, but I'm saying awareness is about receiving everything. Awareness doesn't produce much. Ear doesn't produce sounds. Taste buds don't produce tastes, even though the vocal cords produce a sound and hands produce a sound. So we have a little bit of say-so there about making noise. More?
Jen Bowing, going back to the other topic. Thank you. I guess in thinking about you, I think often about you saying don't do anything unless you have to, especially right now, because there's lots of protests that I'm a little bit ambivalent about participating in. And I guess I'm wondering, how do we know when we must act?
I just think if you're looking at it really closely, then you, with the milieu that you're in, the situation you're in, then you probably will see that you really need to go do this. There won't be a lot of thought about it necessarily. When I say don't do anything unless you have to, it's just another way of talking about patience, is rather than try to get on something so you get feel the illusion that you're in control, is just wait. You know, in your situation, I don't know, do you ever go to a town hall meeting?
Mm-mm.
So it would seem like that might be a way to participate with the people that are aligned with your understanding or the particular agendas that are going on in your town, being in Brooklyn. I don't know. I don't track what's going on there, but there are people out there who are trying to address some of the major things that are challenges that are going on. There's some intense challenges, as we all know, without talking about the political stuff at all. It's just things could come apart really soon, and we could be under a dictatorship. The way it's looking does not look good. So that's why the community is so important. We have a community here. Even our community just gets difficult. We have some kind of infighting here with people that are all trying to train their minds, and yet there's this similar kind of thing that comes up of right and wrong, should be and shouldn't be, who's right, who's wrong, who's doing the right thing, who's doing the wrong thing. More about that if you haven't. Jen,
That's it for now. Thank you.
come and see us soon, will you?
I will try.
You better. Well, I'm not gonna make you or anything, but I'm just inviting you with a really intense finger shake.
I'll take the threat. That's fine.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hello, Valley. I'm not sure how to go into this area, but as you've been talking, I've been thinking about the difference between awareness receiving and not believing our thoughts. And it seems like there's some type of activity that occurs that appears as if there's a belief. For example, if you see a truck coming, you jump out of the way, and that happens before the thoughts kick in.
Yeah, well said.
So how do we go into that? Like, it shows up as maybe like an instinct of some kind. Is that a kind of non-conceptual belief, or how would you talk about that?
I think it's like that, non-conceptual belief. Something starts moving your direction, you're gonna jump aside, you know. Think something's moving my way, you don't have time, you just jump aside. So it's an instinct preserving this receiver, sound receiver, sight receivers, taste, touch, emotions, this illusion of someone. So we're not asking, I'm not asking, and the Buddhist Dharma, as I understand, is not asking you to say, to disbelieve in this, disregard what would be called a perception impulse. It would be third skandha. You perceive something, there's an impulse to get out of the way. But when that moves from perception impulse on the jumping out of the way of something, that's one situation. But when there's a perception of something and there's an impulse to hate it or an impulse to push it away, or that happens in the mind stream where there's not actually any visible occurrence even happening. So I think there's a differentiation there. And I just think it, in terms of awareness, it just takes time to work with that. So I say, don't do anything unless you have to. The idea is that eventually it gets down. It's that the area I'm addressing, not necessarily out here in our, don't eat spaghetti unless you have to kind of thing. It's more in the consciousness. So by saying that, it brings your consciousness more to what you're believing in or pushing on or thinking about when you don't really have to do that. And then quite often what will happen, it'll show you where you just can't help it. You have to think about certain things. You have to contemplate or think about it, or I guess the word would be dwell on some things that are just negative. And from the point of view of meditator or awareness practice, just be aware of it rather than make yourself into a double up and make it a double negativity where what a terrible thing you're doing, you're believing your negative thoughts or following or dwelling on your negative thoughts. You might have to dwell on them for a while in order for there to be awareness around it. More?
Bowing. You just reminded me of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's comments about the Enlightenment Ward. And I'm wondering if underneath the layer of thoughts and believing thoughts, if there's a layer of just raw experience that, is it safe to say that we have to give that the benefit of the doubt? It seems like there's a connection between believing and receiving, that they're different, but there's something similar there where when I'm receiving with the awareness, I might not be going so far as to believe it, but I'm allowing it, or I'm giving it some kind of credit or something.
But it's coming towards you, and so it has its own dynamic, has its own temperature, has its own speed, and insofar as you can receive, and then it will, if it needs to hang around, it will. If it doesn't, it'll keep on going. So it's not about receiving it, though. That's a different kind of dynamics that it comes out of ego.
Long bowing.
When I said I didn't mean receive, I mean that's not about accepting it. That's the word I was looking for. Accepting.
What is do you see a fundamental difference between receiving and believing?
Yes, receiving is it just comes through. You just receive it. You just feel it. You look at something, you see the wall, you receive the colors, the yellow, receive it. So receiving, believing is something that is added on to whatever is being received. You give it, you validate it, or you disbelieve it, or you attempt to disregard it or turn away from it and just not look at the yellow, or to try to pull more yellow in. That might not be so workable either. You don't do anything with it but receive it. Be very respectful to anything that's showing up in front of you, because its basic nature is unreal. It is an illusion, and it's dependently risen, which gives you a structure to work with, especially someone who wants to work with this conceptually. There's plenty of work to be done right there with concepts. As you know, you've looked at that yourself extensively, to look at what is the nature of that which arises. If you look at it, it's not just skin, flesh, bone, and a hand. It's dependently risen. It's not this separate thing. It's not separate from any other thing that's arising. So to receive is just receive. And if you believe it or disbelieve it or shut down on it, then you're trying to protect some part of the consciousness, which is called ego, self, which may be threatened by that. More?
In that context, would the verb experience be somewhat synonymous with receiving, and not as much as believing, but just experience that? I'm just looking for another way of talking about it, because when I think about awareness, receiving something with the awareness,
No, experience would work.
experience.
You hear it, you smell it, you taste it. It just tastes. It's just, you might later on think it's sour, sweet.
Because if the enlightenment word isn't necessary, it seems to be because we can navigate the world without
Yes,
needing that help. So there
well
seems to be
said, yes.
something happening there.
enlightenment more is what he was talking about there, is saying that you go so crazy that you can't even function, because this is such an illusion, you can't even function in it anymore. But no, he's not talking about that. He's talking about non-dual, not the duality of it's a total illusion and nothing is real anymore. That's a misunderstanding, but the actual understanding is, nothing is separate from anything else. They're not two things anywhere. Therefore, the craziness and the sanity are not separate. Everything comes together. You notice our political operatives in the world today are all separating. Their whole mudras like this, separate. So everything, each time they say something, they go like this. But what we do this, not because it needs to be brought together, but because it's already together. This is already together. But if there's any kind of struggle or warfare going in your mind, your responsibility. No one's doing anything to you. It's yours. Just you're responsible. You can do it. Won't necessarily feel so good, but you can do it. Start now. Train your mind. see clearly.